Abraham Lincoln's life stands as one of the most powerful examples of perseverance and leadership in history. Born on February 12, 1809, in a small log cabin in Hodgenville, Kentucky, his beginnings were extremely humble. His parents, Thomas and Nancy Lincoln, worked hard but struggled to make ends meet. The family's simple cabin had only one room that served as their home for eating, sleeping, and living. Education was difficult to access in those days, and there were no schools nearby. Books were rare, and the Lincolns could not afford a teacher. Yet from a young age, Abraham developed a deep love for reading and learning. Life for the young boy was far from easy. When he was only 9, tragedy struck. His mother, Nancy, died from a sickness caused by contaminated milk, a loss that left a lasting emptiness in his heart. A year later, his father remarried. Sarah Bush Johnston, his stepmother, brought warmth and stability into their lives. She treated Abraham with kindness and encouraged his curiosity, filling their home with the few books she could find. Her support played a crucial role in shaping Lincoln's passion for knowledge. Despite the emotional wounds of his early years, Abraham worked tirelessly on his father's farm. He chopped wood, built fences, and plowed fields. But no matter how exhausting the day had been, he always made time to read, often studying by candlelight late into the night. As he grew older, Lincoln began dreaming of a bigger life beyond the family farm. At the age of 22, he moved to a small village in Illinois called New Salem, where he found work at a local store. It was here that he met Anne Rutledge, a kind and gentle woman with whom he shared a close bond. Their connection was deep, but fate dealt him another painful blow, and became ill and died young. Her death devastated Abraham, marking another heartbreaking chapter in his life. Even through grief, he refused to surrender to despair. Each challenge taught him resilience and strengthened his determination to move forward. Lincoln soon decided to devote himself to something that had always fascinated him: public life and politics. At just 23, he ran for a seat in the Illinois state legislature. With no money, no experience, and little support, he campaigned purely on belief in himself. Though he lost, the defeat only fueled his ambition to try again. After his first political loss, Abraham Lincoln didn't give up. Instead, he turned his attention to studying law, a field that had long interested him. Without formal education or the money to attend school, he taught himself through persistence and self-discipline. He borrowed law books, studied every night, and practiced speaking in front of a mirror to strengthen his communication skills. After years of independent study, he passed the bar exam in 1836 and became a licensed lawyer at the age of 27. Lincoln began his legal career in Springfield, Illinois. His honesty and fairness soon made him well known in the community, earning him the nickname Honest Abe. People admired his integrity, and clients trusted that he would always stand for what was right. His growing reputation helped him succeed, but he never let success make him arrogant. Even as a respected lawyer, he remained humble and continued to dream about making a difference on a larger scale. In 1834, at just 25, Lincoln was elected to the Illinois state legislature as a member of the Whig Party. This marked his official entry into politics and gave him the opportunity to work on issues that mattered deeply to him. He used his position not only to write and debate laws but also to speak out about the moral challenges facing the nation, especially the issue of slavery. While many politicians preferred to stay silent about such a controversial topic, Lincoln believed that freedom was a fundamental right for all human beings. His courage to voice unpopular opinions began to draw attention. People noticed his passion for justice and his calm, thoughtful nature. However, his path in politics was never smooth. In 1836, at only 27, he decided to run for Congress. He hoped that from that position, he could fight for fairness and work toward abolishing slavery. But again, he faced disappointment. He lost the election. Still, Lincoln never saw failure as final. He viewed every defeat as a chance to learn and grow. Over the next few years, he continued practicing law, helping those in need, and developing his leadership skills. Gradually, His influence grew as more people began to see him as a man of principle and conviction. Lincoln often said that the best way to predict the future is to create it. Guided by that belief, he kept preparing himself for greater responsibilities. His persistence paid off when, in 1858, he was chosen to run for the U.S. Senate. Though he knew the challenge would be immense, he accepted the opportunity with determination, ready to take his ideas to a national stage. The 1858 Senate race became a defining moment in Abraham Lincoln's life. His opponent was Stephen A. Douglas, one of the most powerful politicians of that time. Their debates, known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates, captured the nation's attention. The two men discussed the moral and political future of America, especially the question of slavery. Lincoln spoke with remarkable clarity and courage. He didn't attack his opponent. Instead, he focused on ideas and principles. His most memorable line, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," summarized his belief that the United States could not survive half slave and half free. The nation, he argued, had to make a choice between justice and oppression. Although Lincoln lost the Senate race, his speeches left a deep impression across the country. Newspapers printed his words, and many people who had never heard of him before began to see him as a man of strong moral character and vision. He became known as someone who would stand up for what was right, even when it was unpopular or risky. Just 2 years later, in 1860, Lincoln's growing reputation led the newly formed Republican Party to nominate him as their candidate for President of the United States. The country was deeply divided. The southern states wanted to keep slavery, while the northern states demanded its end. Lincoln's campaign focused on one main goal: to stop the spread of slavery into new territories. On November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected as the 16th President of the United States. His victory shocked the South, where many believed his presidency would destroy their way of life. Within months, 7 southern states announced their secession from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. The nation stood on the edge of collapse. In April 1861, just a few months after Lincoln took office, the first shots of the American Civil War were fired. The war was more than a political conflict. It was a fight for the soul of the country. Lincoln faced the enormous challenge of preserving the Union while confronting the moral crisis of slavery. As the war began, Lincoln hoped to avoid bloodshed, but peace was impossible. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and Lincoln bore the weight of every decision. Despite criticism from all directions, some saying he was too harsh, others claiming he was too soft, he stayed firm in his purpose. His leadership was defined not by anger or revenge, but by patience, courage, and an unwavering belief in justice. As the Civil War intensified, Abraham Lincoln faced challenges that tested every part of his character. The conflict tore the nation apart, costing thousands of lives on both sides. The president carried an immense burden. He had to guide the country through its darkest period while trying to keep hope alive. Lincoln's leadership during the war was marked by calm determination. He spent endless nights reading battle reports and discussing strategies with his generals. Yet beyond military decisions, his deepest concern was the unity of the people and the moral direction of the nation. He knew that the war wasn't only about politics or territory, it was about freedom and human dignity. In July 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg became a turning point. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, claiming tens of thousands of lives. The Union Army emerged victorious, but the victory came with unimaginable loss. Moved by the suffering he had witnessed, Lincoln decided to deliver a short speech to honor the fallen soldiers. On November 19, 1863, he gave what would become one of the most famous speeches in history, the Gettysburg Address. In just a few brief sentences, Lincoln expressed the essence of America's struggle. He reminded the nation that the war was not just about preserving the Union, but about giving the country a new birth of freedom. He envisioned a government of the people, by the people, for the people that would endure through generations. Those words became a symbol of hope and unity, inspiring Americans to continue the fight for equality. But while Lincoln showed extraordinary strength as a leader, his personal life was marked by deep sorrow. In 1862, His young son Willie died at the age of 11 after a sudden illness. The loss broke Lincoln's heart and devastated his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. Yet, despite his grief, he continued his duties as president, often finding comfort in his work and his belief that he was serving a greater cause. His personal pain made him even more compassionate toward others. Those close to him said that his empathy grew stronger after Willie's death. Lincoln became more determined than ever to end the suffering of others, especially the millions of enslaved people who still lived without freedom. By 1863, Lincoln decided it was time to take a bold step that would change the course of history. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all enslaved people in the Confederate States were to be set free. This was not only a political decision but a moral one, signaling a new chapter in America's fight for human rights. The Emancipation Proclamation, issued in 1863, marked a turning point in American history. With this bold act, Abraham Lincoln transformed the Civil War from a fight to preserve the Union into a fight for human freedom. It was a courageous decision that carried enormous risk. Many in the North opposed the abolition of slavery, fearing economic and social upheaval. Yet Lincoln remained firm, believing that true peace could only be achieved when every person was free. This declaration gave the war a new purpose. It inspired enslaved people to seek freedom and motivated abolitionists to fight with renewed determination. However, Lincoln knew that words alone were not enough. To ensure that slavery was permanently abolished, he began pushing for a constitutional amendment, the 13th Amendment, that would legally end slavery across the entire United States. While managing the political and moral dimensions of the war, Lincoln also had to deal with military challenges. Finding the right general to lead the Union Army proved difficult. His early commanders were cautious and often hesitant to act. Frustrated by their inaction, Lincoln searched for someone with both courage and resolve. Eventually, he found that leader in Ulysses S. Grant. Grant's bold strategies and relentless determination began turning the tide of the war. Under his leadership, the Union Army achieved a series of critical victories. By 1864, the Confederate forces were weakening, and the end of the conflict seemed within reach. Lincoln placed his full trust in Grant to see the war through to victory. As the Union advanced, Lincoln's hope for peace grew stronger. He envisioned a country rebuilt not through revenge, but through reconciliation and healing. He wanted the Southern states to return to the Union without hatred, believing that forgiveness was the only way to truly restore the nation. Finally, on April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee, the leader of the Confederate Army, surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. The Civil War, America's bloodiest conflict, had ended. Lincoln's dream of a united and free nation had come true. But just as the country began to heal, tragedy struck once more. Only a few days after the surrender, on April 14, 1865, Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. During the performance, he was shot by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. The president was carried to a nearby house, where he died the next morning, on April 15th. The news of his death shocked the nation. The man who had led the country through its greatest crisis, who had freed millions and preserved the Union, was gone. Yet his legacy was only beginning. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln plunged the United States into mourning. Across the country, people wept for the leader who had guided them through the nation's darkest days. Though his life was cut short, his vision for a united and equal America continued to inspire generations that followed. After Lincoln's death, Vice President Andrew Johnson took over the presidency. The country entered a difficult era known as Reconstruction, a time of rebuilding and reconciliation after years of devastating war. The South was in ruins, and the challenge of restoring both the economy and national unity was immense. Despite the political struggles that followed, Lincoln's ideas remained the guiding light for those who wanted to heal the divided nation. One of Lincoln's most important accomplishments lived on, the 13th Amendment. Passed shortly before his death, it permanently abolished slavery throughout the United States. This achievement represented not just the end of an institution but the beginning of a new chapter in American history, one founded on the principles of freedom and equality. Yet, the work was far from complete. Lincoln had dreamed of a nation where all people, regardless of color, could live as equals. That dream would take many more decades of struggle to come closer to reality. His story became a model for perseverance, a reminder that progress often begins with one person's courage to stand for what is right. Lincoln's life itself was a lesson in determination. Born in poverty, he rose through sheer hard work and a relentless will to learn. Without formal education, he taught himself to read and write, and later became a skilled lawyer and respected leader. His rise from humble beginnings showed the world that greatness does not depend on wealth or privilege, but on persistence and purpose. What made Lincoln exceptional was not only his intelligence but his humanity. Even in the most difficult moments, he stayed compassionate and kind. He believed that leadership was not about power or status, but about service and moral strength. His ability to forgive those who opposed him, and his constant faith in people's capacity for goodness, made him a timeless example of true leadership. Over time, his memory became immortalized in monuments, writings, and the hearts of millions. The Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., built in 1922, stands as one of the greatest tributes to his life and legacy. The grand statue of Lincoln sitting in quiet reflection captures his calm strength and determination. Etched on the walls behind him are the words of his Gettysburg Address, a reminder of the ideals of freedom and equality he lived and died for. The Lincoln Memorial became more than just a monument. It turned into a symbol of hope, equality, and perseverance. People from around the world visit it to reflect on his legacy and the progress humanity continues to make toward justice and freedom. His words carved into stone still remind everyone that liberty and equality are the foundation of a truly great nation. Lincoln's wisdom continues to inspire. One of his famous sayings, "I am a slow walker, but I never walk back," perfectly describes his philosophy of life. No matter how long progress took, he believed in moving forward step by step. Defeat never stopped him. Instead, it became a reason to grow stronger. His story shows that perseverance is often more powerful than talent or luck. Perhaps Lincoln's greatest legacy lies in his moral courage. He didn't just talk about justice, he acted on it, even when it cost him dearly. The Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment were not easy choices. They were decisions that risked his popularity and his life. Yet Lincoln stood firm because he believed that every person deserved dignity and freedom. His leadership reshaped the moral direction of an entire nation. The values he championed, compassion, equality, humility, and perseverance, still hold deep meaning in the modern world. Even today, societies face division, injustice, and inequality, just as Lincoln did. His example reminds us that real change begins with courage and a belief in doing what is right, not what is easy. Lincoln's life wasn't just about politics. It was about personal growth, resilience, and vision. Born into poverty, he experienced loss, failure, and heartbreak, yet never gave up on his dream of a better future. His story proves that greatness isn't measured by power or success but by character, by how a person responds when life becomes difficult. He taught us that failure is not the end, but a lesson on the road to progress. When he lost elections, faced rejection, and endured personal tragedy, he kept going. His humility and kindness made him a leader of the people, one who understood their struggles and spoke with sincerity. From Lincoln's journey, we learn 4 powerful lessons: dream big, start small, overcome fear, lead with compassion, and believe in equality. He showed that anyone, no matter their beginnings, can leave a legacy of purpose and change the world for the better. Today, as we reflect on Abraham Lincoln's remarkable life, we are reminded that every challenge can be turned into a step forward. His story continues to encourage us to rise above our circumstances, stay true to our values, and create a future built on justice, hope, and unity, one day at a time.